The steady hum of the diner served as a constant backdrop to the chaotic Saturday breakfast rush. Families chatted over stacks of pancakes, and the sound of clinking coffee cups echoed off the walls. In a corner booth, Sarah Jennings sat alone, her back pressed firmly against the wall. Her fingers absent-mindedly traced the edge of her ceramic mug. Clad in a worn jacket and faded jeans, she blended seamlessly into the background, becoming just another unremarkable face in the crowd. The waitress, a middle-aged woman with weary eyes, approached and smiled softly as she refilled Sarah's cup. "Waiting for someone, hun?" the waitress asked. "Just my dad," Sarah replied gently, her warm voice at odds with her cautious posture, as though she was used to being overlooked. Outside, the rumble of motorcycles shattered the diner's calm. A group of 5 burly men swaggered in, their leather jackets emblazoned with skulls and flames. They surveyed the room like they owned it, their loud, boisterous voices cutting through the ambient chatter. "Look at this place," one sneered loudly, his voice brimming with disdain. "What a small-town dump." The group claimed the booth nearest Sarah, their laughter grating. One of them, a broad-shouldered man with a shaved head, glanced at Sarah and smirked. "Hey, sweetheart," he called, his voice loud enough to turn heads. "That seat taken?" Sarah said nothing, her gaze fixed on her coffee as her fingers tightened around the mug. "Don't think she heard you, Rick," another biker teased, chuckling. Rick's heavy boots thudded against the tiled floor as he approached Sarah's booth. He leaned in, invading her space. "I said, that seat taken?" A deep voice from the doorway cut through the tension. "She heard you." The diner fell silent as every head turned to see the man standing at the entrance. Tall and imposing, he carried himself with a military bearing. His face was weathered yet strong, his eyes hidden behind sunglasses. But the white cane in his hand told the real story. This was Sarah's father, a blind veteran. Sarah's guarded expression softened as her father, Tom Jennings, confidently tapped his way toward her booth. His cane swept the floor in practiced arcs, his movements steady despite his blindness. "Morning, Dad," Sarah said, rising to guide him into the seat across from her. "Morning, sweetheart," Tom replied, his calm yet firm voice commanding respect without a hint of aggression. Rick chuckled, still standing nearby. "Well, isn't this cute? Daddy's here to save the day." Tom tilted his head toward the voice, his expression unreadable behind the dark glasses. "I don't know who you are, son, but I suggest you walk away." The other bikers hooted, encouraging Rick. "What's he gonna do?" "He can't even see me," Rick sneered, leaning closer. Sarah's jaw tightened as she steadied herself by placing a hand on the table. "Leave us alone," she said firmly. Rick ignored her, his grin widening. "What's the matter, old man? Need your little girl to fight your battles?" Tom's lips pressed into a thin line. He didn't need sight to sense Rick's arrogance. "I've fought bigger battles than you'll ever know, son," he said evenly. "But if you're smart, you'll sit down and enjoy your breakfast before you make a mistake." The room was thick with tension. The waitress froze mid-step, and whispers spread among the other patrons. Rick laughed, but his confidence wavered. Sarah reached for her phone, her fingers trembling slightly. She wasn't afraid of the bikers. Her fear ran deeper. Dialing a number, she spoke quietly but with resolve. "It's me. I need you here. Now." Minutes felt like hours as the air grew heavier with unease. Though the bikers resumed their crude jokes, their voices louder than before, Rick kept casting glances at Sarah and Tom. Out of nowhere, the sound of engines filled the air, not just one or two, but a deafening roar that grew louder with each passing second. Heads turned toward the diner windows as a line of sleek black SUVs pulled into the parking lot, gleaming under the morning sun. The vehicles came to a stop, and doors opened simultaneously. Men and women in sharp suits stepped out, moving with precision and purpose. They weren't police, but they exuded an undeniable authority. The diner door swung open, and a man in his 40s entered, his suit immaculate, his expression cold and unreadable. He scanned the room, and his gaze finally landed on Sarah. "Miss Jennings," he said, his voice clipped. "Are you all right?" The bikers exchanged uneasy glances, and Rick shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Who the hell are these people?" he muttered. Sarah stood, her shoulders squared, her voice unwavering.
"They work for me," she said simply.
The room fell into a stunned silence, only the faint hum of the idling SUVs outside breaking the stillness. Rick's jaw tightened as he tried to regain his earlier bravado, studying Sarah with a mix of confusion and disbelief. "You? What, you some kind of big shots?" Sarah's lips curled into a small, cold smile. "Something like that." The suited man stepped closer, his eyes narrowing as he addressed the bikers. "Miss Jennings doesn't appreciate being harassed," he said, his tone icy. "I suggest you apologize and leave."
"Now?"
Rick stood, his fists clenched. "And if we don't?" The suited man didn't flinch. "Then we'll have a problem." Sarah crossed her arms, her voice steady as steel. "You're outnumbered, Rick. Trust me, you don't want to test their patience." One of the bikers muttered something under his breath, but Rick hesitated, his eyes flicking between the suited figures and Sarah. Tom, still seated, leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "You've got a choice to make, son," he said quietly. "Choose wisely." Rick's bravado cracked, and with a muttered curse, he turned and stormed out, his gang following reluctantly. The diner erupted in whispers as the tension lifted. Sarah exhaled deeply, her hands trembling ever so slightly. "You okay, sweetheart?" Tom asked gently. Sarah nodded, her voice soft. "Yeah, Dad, I'm okay." But as she sat back down, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, and her expression hardened. "It's not over," she murmured. Tom tilted his head, sensing her change in demeanor. "What do you mean?" Sarah met his gaze, determination flashing in her eyes. "They're part of something bigger. And I'm going to stop it." The departure of the bikers left the diner buzzing with murmurs, but Sarah wasn't listening. Her focus was entirely on her phone, her brow furrowed in concentration. Despite his blindness, Tom was always perceptive. He could sense her unease. "What's going on, Sarah?" he asked quietly. She hesitated, tapping her fingers against the phone.
"This isn't just about them, Dad."
"Rick and his crew, they're connected to something far worse." Lowering her voice, she glanced around. "I've been tracking them for months. They're part of a hate group that's been targeting veterans and minorities across the state. Intimidation, vandalism, violence. You name it." Tom's jaw tightened, his calm demeanor cracking for just a moment. "And you didn't tell me?" "I didn't want to worry you," she admitted, her voice a little softer. "But now, they've made it personal." Tom reached across the table, his calloused hand finding hers. "Sarah, I may be blind, but I'm not helpless. Whatever you're planning, you don't have to do it alone." Before Sarah could respond, the man in the suit cleared his throat. "Miss Jennings, we should leave. The team will handle the cleanup here." Sarah nodded, rising from her seat. "Dad, let's go. I'll explain on the way." Tom stood, unfolding his cane. "Where are we going?" Sarah's lips pressed into a thin line. "To finish what we started." The caravan of SUVs rolled out of the small town, heading for the outskirts where a nondescript warehouse sat hidden behind rows of pine trees. Inside, the space was starkly different from its exterior. Bright lights illuminated rows of monitors, desks with laptops, and a team of people moving with military precision. Tom paused at the entrance, his hand resting on Sarah's arm. "What is this?" he asked. "This," Sarah said, gesturing to the bustling room, "is what I've been working on. It's a private task force I built to tackle hate crimes and systemic corruption. We've been operating quietly, gathering evidence, and taking down groups like Rick's." Tom's face remained neutral, but there was a hint of pride in his voice. "You did all this?" Sarah shrugged. "After what happened to Mom, I couldn't just sit back and do nothing." Her voice wavered for a moment, but she quickly regained composure. "Anyway, we've been monitoring that biker gang for weeks. Rick's crew is small, but they're connected to a larger network. They've been infiltrating small towns, spreading their poison under the radar." Tom gripped his cane tightly. "And now they've come after us." Sarah nodded.
"Exactly.
"But they made a mistake. Because now we're going after them." Her lead analyst, a sharp-eyed woman named Rachel, approached with a tablet in hand. We've tracked Rick and his gang back to their clubhouse. It's a biker bar on the edge of town, but it's more than that. It's their base of operations. Do they know we're onto them? Sarah asked. Rachel shook her head. Doubt it. But there's more. The bar's hosting a meeting tonight with members of their larger network. If we move now, we could catch some of the higher-ups. Tom's expression darkened. These people aren't just loudmouths. They're dangerous. Sarah placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. That's why we're not going in blind. No offense, Dad. Tom smirked. None taken. Rachel continued. We've coordinated with local law enforcement, but we'll take the lead. We've got undercover agents ready to move in, and we've secured warrants for their arrests. Sarah nodded.
Good.
Let's make sure this ends tonight. Tom turned toward his daughter, his voice low. You're taking a risk, Sarah. These people won't go down without a fight. Sarah met his gaze, her resolve unwavering. I know, Dad. But someone has to stand up to them, and I'm not backing down.